Welcome to Run with Purpose. This is episode number 118. And for those of you that are new to the show, my name is Flores, and I am so very glad that you found this podcast. Would love if you would subscribe. And as always, you can reach out to me on all the socials everywhere at flores.run. Hope everyone is having a great day. I hope you had a good long weekend, Labor Day weekend. Hopefully you got outside. I'm actually recording this before the weekend, so you know, the mystery and magic of podcasting, right? But the weekend looks good here, at least. You know, in the Chicagoland area, the temperature should be relatively warm, but it still should be sunny and nice, and not the temperatures that we had been having the last week or week and a half ago. I think it was kind of across the entire country, right, where everyone was getting these like 100 plus temperatures. I think our high here, I think Kayla told me one time it was like feels like 114. It's like 104 feels like 114 or something like that, which I'm like, this is ridiculous. This is way too hot. But good thing I work in an office and I don't really have to deal with it, you know? I'm cooling off today, though, with if you're watching the video, you'll see it, Mamita's Tequila Sunrise, I think. Yeah, tequila seltzers. They're delicious. Not yet a sponsor of this podcast. Maybe one day, you know, we can get cool like that, maybe. Probably not. Just keep buying them myself from Benny's. But yeah, this... hopefully get a nice weekend in, enjoy the weather, be outside a little bit. Things have been going pretty well with my runs on the things I've been doing training wise. A lot of my long runs have been feeling good. And then some of the other runs have just been like, things just aren't clicking the way they should. My foot's kind of hurting. Just like little achy pains and stuff like that. And looking at my miles, it was the most miles I've ran actually all year in a single month. And it wasn't a lot in how it should be from its training standard wise, but the lots of today. Sorry, it's been a day at work, so we're trying to get in the flow of things. But with running, those short runs have been kind of tough. So I think I'm gonna take this weekend is going to go a little further down in miles and really just try to like take it easy as we go into these final few races of really trying to make sure I'm focused on getting to the finish line and kind of powering through. And less than a month now, I have the back-to-backs out in New Hampshire and Maine. So that will be an interesting test. It's been a while since I've done back-to-backs. I don't think I've done them since my foot issue. Or maybe I've done one set. But yeah, it's been a journey. So I'm going to see how well that plays out. But like I said, most miles I've done in a single month, so I'm pretty proud of that. Things are going really nice. Long runs are feeling good. But how do we make all the runs feel good so it's actually consistent? I'm not just like running hard and then hurting myself. But this next week, I'm actually going to be in Salt Lake City and then the following week in Ohio. So yeah, if you're in either one of those areas, reach out. Love to meet some folks, hang out with some folks. I'll probably be planning some runs while I'm in Salt Lake. I'll only be there for the week. This episode comes out on Tuesday, so I'll be there that entire week. But yeah, that's kind of everything that's going on here. And today's topic is something that I've discussed in a lot of episodes before, and you probably see the common theme. If you're a newer listener, you may see like a repeating theme here, and even if you're a long time, you might see the kind of flow of how the podcast has kind of changed and the things that I talk about and the kind of the ideas in my head. But this one kind of goes hand in hand with a lot of the things that I've been talking about recently. And funny enough, you know, just how the algorithms are listening and everything's kind of following the actions that I'm taking on social media. I'm seeing this more and more on Instagram and TikTok and that sort of thing. These ideas that kind of reinforce the things that I'm talking about. And the idea today is really talking about do it. And there's this one specific like motivational type one that really has hit a few times when listening to it of like, hey, this is some real motivation and it's really around this idea of do it. And this really had the idea for me to do this episode. So I wanted to play at least the audio from the reel. I'll put a link in the description. This sound is being used all over the place. So the specific one I have, I'll probably just link to the sound, but here it is.
Do it sad, do it angry, do it heartbroken, do it miserable, do it excited, do it energized, do it happy, do it tired, do it confident, do it discouraged. Do it anyway.
This idea of however you need to do it, just do it. Do it sad, do it heartbroken, do it however, but do it anyway. And there's some power in the tone and the cadence of that, right? We can get behind it as this like motivational mantra, like locker room kind of cadence to it. But it really comes down to this idea of doing it anyway. Regardless of the situation, regardless of what's going around you, regardless of how you feel in the moment, actually just going out and doing it. Nike has their saying of just do it. There's a bunch of companies that go around this aspect of just doing the thing because that's what we need to do. Is we need to kind of step out into that uncomfortable zone and just do it. And even if we're not feeling the greatest day, we still need to go do it. Or even if we're feeling amazing, we need to go do it. It's kind of doing it in all shapes and sizes, and no matter seltzer is probably not a good idea for bubbles, but no matter the situation that you're going through, the experience you're going through, kind of the do it anyways. And sometimes though, I know it's not something that feels easy to do, right? I know I talk about this a lot of pushing through, mustering up and just getting things done and just doing it. But the honest fact is it's not easy to do. We have life that happens and our circumstances and how we feel about certain things and how other people make us feel about things. We have all of these things kind of wrapped up in this, and we can get so stuck in a mindset that it's hard to actually step out and do it. Really isn't that easy. But I had a previous episode that kind of went into this idea that simple isn't easy. And that was more about simple living and that sort of thing. But this is the same concept of just because something is simple, the concept itself is simple, no matter how I'm feeling, no matter what the situation is. I just need to still show up. I still need to do it. But sometimes it's not easy to do. So how do we reframe it in a way so we can start figuring out the pieces that we need to lay out along the way, not to make simple easy, but to make simple attainable? Because simple isn't something that's just easy to start, much less easy to continue to do. And when we think about this idea of just doing it, I think we need to be careful that we don't kind of get into this idea of this hustle culture, right? This is so prevalent in everything online right now in social media. It can turn into a very toxic idea of needing to do everything. If I'm not doing everything, I'm not being productive. And if I'm not doing this, then I'm a waste of space. And you have all these like toxic thoughts, or the idea I need to do everything. I need to be a part of everything, which if you go back and listen to the YOLO episode, right? The same idea of how are we spending our time and our focus and our energy and the why behind we're doing it, right? We need to be doing it, but we need to understand the purpose behind the doing. And when I think about this idea of do it, I think it's more about how to focus in those uncertain times. When we aren't really sure if we can pull it off, or starting with that step and moving forward, we just don't know how to take that first step and actually do it. But if we get the idea out of our head that I'm not moving in every direction, I'm not making a difference, and really start understanding how we focus our time and our energy to kind of make the largest impact, right? Then our do it has more of a focused purpose, right? It's not just do it to do its sake. It's doing it with the purpose in mind so we know where we're going for. So again, the last few episodes kind of tie into this idea of understanding where we're spending that time and energy, and then focusing that in to our purpose. So then whatever we're doing it with purpose and intentionality. Now, when we have this idea of doing it, which I don't know how many times I can say do it or doing it. It's going to be, I might have to go back and listen, just put a counter, because it's going to be funny how many times I say it. But we can face barriers sometimes, right? There's things that can come up that prevent us from doing it or being able to do it. And sometimes these barriers can just be excuses. Some of them can be legitimate concerns or things that we need to think about. But really, there's still excuses of why we're not getting things done. Again, an excuse can be either way. It doesn't have to be something we're just making an excuse to get out of it. It can also be a legitimate reason of why we can't do something. But I kind of hit on one of those already, right? This idea of imposter syndrome, of we're not able to see ourselves doing this because we're afraid we're going to fail, or we have this idea of how could I be the one doing this? Like, who am I kidding? This is not me, right? And there's multiple components to this, and the idea of fear and anxiety of, what right do I have to be able to do this, or who do I think I am in doing this? And that really stops us from trying, which we've talked about before. And we lean into that fear. And when we lean into that fear, we can, it really stops us in our tracks, right? We lean into the unknown, or I am not good enough, or whatever the case might be. And when we lean into that, we end up, again, not even attempting to start. One of the other barriers that I can kind of see with this same idea is this idea of perfection or qualifications. Am I qualified enough? And there was this reel that brought up this idea so perfectly, I think. And it was talking about this idea that we confuse inexperience with being unqualified. And it kind of goes along with the imposter syndrome, right? Since we don't have the experience, we haven't done something, therefore, why do I think I can do this? How do I think I'm qualified to do something, or can I even be qualified because I don't have the experience to do so? We merge those lines where we can't really tell the difference between inexperience and I'm actually not qualified. There are certain things that I'm just not qualified to do, even with experience. But there's other things that I want to learn and keep growing in, right? But how crazy of a thought is that just because I'm not experienced in something, therefore, that means I'm unqualified to even try to do it. If this was the case, no one would accomplish anything new, right? Because we don't have the experience, therefore, I'm not able to do X, Y, and Z, whatever the case might be. We have to gain the experience in the moment in order to become qualified. We have to gain experience in the things we're not qualified in to then be qualified. You don't just become qualified in something, right? There was a reel that I saw actually today that really compared this idea from imposter syndrome standpoint. Is that's not what holds us back. That's what makes us feel bad about the thing. But he compared it to folks climbing Mount Everest. And regardless of the skill of the climber, they all have to start at the base camp. They have to get acclimated to the elevation, to the air, to breathing, and they have to take those steps along the way. Everyone has to stop here, regardless of how skilled you are. So if we think about this idea of who am I to be here, it's like, hey, you have to take those same steps and grow along the way to make that a part of your journey. So even if you're not experienced yet, it doesn't mean that you cannot put in additional work and get to that point where you are qualified to do whatever it is. Right? And then there's one extra layer. What I brought up is this idea of perfection, that we may start down the path of doing something, but then we fall off quickly because we're unable to perfect whatever it is. Or maybe even we go a step before that because we don't think we can be perfect at something, we don't even try. Remember Katie, I've had her on the podcast a few times, Katie from the Pacific Northwest. She talked about this idea when she was doing health and wellness coaches. There's so many people that she looks up to. But she said, if I set my sights saying I would never be as good as them, I basically stop myself in my tracks and I don't even get there. Instead of saying, hey, I'm not trying to compare myself to these other people. I'm trying to compare myself to yesterday. I'm trying to see how I can continue to grow by doing it and doing it every single day and just doing it a little better than the day before. How, when we actually build upon those things, we can get better and we can grow more in whatever the skill or experience is. But we can sometimes stifle or we consider it a barrier because we're trying to strive for perfection, knowing that we're never going to reach to perfection. I just thought about the top of my head, there's been a lot of reels lately. It was for an interview with Kobe Bryant, and she was saying, this idea of winning and losing in the aspect of how they feel in games. And he's like, there's a third option, and it's I play to learn. Every time it's another learning experience. And can I continue to grow, continue to expand on the thing that I did, and continue to learn every single step of the way? And I think that has to go with this whole doing it mentality, right? How do we take the things that we're doing and make sure that we're adding to it day by day, moment by moment, to continue growing in that process? Therefore, we are gaining experience and then feeling more qualified in the aspect as well. If we wait for all of these things to kind of shape out in a way that everything is just clean cut and everything's going to work out exactly the way it needs to, we're never going to do anything. We need to understand that with perfection or even expectations of experience or qualifications, like that's not the goal, but rather it's the growth in that process of when we're doing something new, we're growing through it. I know I'm not perfect at anything, but I know there's a handful of things that I'm growing towards and continuing to try to get better. And knowing that, hey, if I can look at yesterday, how did I compare today versus yesterday? And even saying that, even if it's, hey, I'm not as good as I was yesterday. Okay, what can I change to make tomorrow better than today? Always having that positive outlook to continue to figure out how I can continue to grow through whatever the circumstance that I'm going through, right? There are so many things that we can continue to grow in and continue to get better in, but we just have to do it. I think it's so easy to look at the barriers that are in front of us, right? We make excuses all the time of why we can't do something. Whether it's what right do I have to be with here, or the fear or anxiety that'll kind of stop me in my tracks before I even start, or even this idea that everything has to be perfect, and if it's not perfect, I'm not even going to do it. It's not even worth doing if I'm not going to do it to a perfection aspect. Or maybe you're taking this do it mentality and you're actually turning it into something toxic, right? That ends up turning us away from trying new things. The idea of this hustle culture. And if I'm not doing everything at 100%, then why am I doing anything at all? We can get stuck in that. And that can be a barrier of us actually doing it, right? I need that Shia LaBeouf, just do it. Do it. I should have put that sound on there. That would have been funny. But we have to understand that in any of those circumstances, we're actually setting ourselves up for failure. If we're giving it this all or nothing approach, or because I can't reach this level, I'm not doing anything, we're again stifling the things that we can even try to do or what we might be able to be great at one day. We need to understand that in order for anything to be done, we have to take action, right? That should be a simple concept to understand. In order for us to get anything done, someone has to do it. Again, simple doesn't mean easy, though. It doesn't mean it's easy to get to that moment. We have to fight through the urge to use our barriers or use our circumstances as an excuse to prevent us from doing the thing. Again, I'll say that we have to fight the urge to use these barriers as an excuse in order to take that next step of doing something. Like that reel said that I played at the start of the episode, right? Do it fast, do it slow, do it angry, do it sad, do it depressed, do it motivated, but do it anyway. You can reach out to me on social media everywhere at flores.run. Subscribe, leave a review for the podcast. Hope you enjoy it. Try to give a little bit of knowledge, little things that are in my head that may be helpful for you. But you know what? Thanks so much for joining me today. Remember to keep running with purpose, one step at a time. See you guys next week.